Literature and Cultural Studies program. I would like to introduce Honorable Professor Prabhanjan Mane sir to all my beloved participants. So, respected Professor Mane sir is a well-known academician and researcher in the field of English studies. He currently works as professor and head in the Department of English and Shivaji University, Kolhapur. He completed he completed his MA in 1999 from the University of Pune with first class. He further enhanced his professional qualification by completing PGCTE 2002 and PGDTE 2004 from CIEFL Hyderabad and qualified the SET examination in December 2003. He was awarded his MPhil degree in August 2005 with an A grade. His dissertation was titled Comic Elements in Eugene O'Neill's Selected Plays, The Hairy Ape, Wilderness, The Iceman Cometh. He earned his PhD in August 2011 with the thesis The Theme of Law, Order, Crime and Punishment in Fiction from Henry Fielding to Albert Camus. Both research works were completed under the guidance of Dr. Prashant K. Sinha. Professor Mane sir has successfully completed major research projects funded by the University Grant Commission and Shivaji University. His research supervision record includes several MPhil and PhD scholars, and currently one postdoctoral researcher is working under his academic mentorship. In his professional career, he has held several important academic positions, including chairman of the Board of Studies for English and member of the Academic Council at Shivaji University. He has also worked on boards of studies of various autonomous colleges across Maharashtra. With rich teaching experience beginning in 1999, Professor Manesar has taught at institutions such as Tuljaram Chaturchand College, the International Student Center, and the Ranade Institute of the University of Pune. Before assuming his present leadership role, he has authored important books including Interpreting Drama 2010 and Interpretations of Literature, Theory and Practice 2019. His scholarly output includes many research papers presented and published at state, national, and international levels. Professor Mane has also completed a film appreciation course jointly organized by the National Film Archive of India and FTII Pune. Additionally, he has contributed to literary discourse through several book review broadcast on All India Radio Pune. Overall, Honorable Professor Prabhanjan Baburao Mane sir is recognized as a committed teacher, prolific researcher, and active academic leader in English literary studies. So, we have a versatile personality with us for today's session. With this brief introduction, I request respected Professor Prabhanjan Baburao Mane sir to give a talk. Hand over to you. You may go on, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for this introduction. At the outset, I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude towards my friend and the coordinator of this course, Professor Mustajib Khan, Head Department of English, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. First of all, before I begin, I would like to know from the participants that as I can see that there are almost 45 participants in this group for this refresher course. So out of 45 participants, how many of you are the teachers of English? How many of you are the teachers of Marathi, Hindi, and other languages? I'm deliberately asking this question because accordingly I can decide, or I can move ahead with the topic which I have selected for my discussion. I hope I am audible.
Yes,
Yes,
sir, you are audible. No
audible, sir.
problem.
You are audible. So, can
Somebody
anybody tell me?
who are from the languages, from if there is a Marathi language teachers, they have to tell their number. English and Hindi also have to tell their numbers. I think 24 is Marathi teachers
45,
numbers. Huh?
45
Out of
English,
45, 24 are the
Marathi
teachers
teachers.
of Marathi. Am I right?
Okay. Others
Okay.
are Hindi and English teachers.
61 is
Okay.
Marathi also, 61.
51.
61.
नो माझा प्रश्न असा आहे, आता इथं 45 पार्टिसिपंट्स या रिफ्रेशर कोर्ससाठी दिसत आहेत. तर या 45 पैकी मराठीचे प्राध्यापक किती आहेत, इंग्रजीचे किती आहेत, की जेणेकरून मला त्या पद्धतीनं जे काही मी डिस्कशन साठी टॉपिक निवडलेला आहे त्याप्रमाणे मराठी, हिंदी, इंग्रजी काहीतरी.
सर तुम्ही काय करा हिंदी
So
आणि इंग्लिश
24 participants are from Marathi subject
ओके ओके
and 1 to 2
ठीक ठीक
are from other states and remaining are from English subject, sir.
Okay, okay. In that case, is it okay if I use English and Hindi for the discussion?
Yes, sir. That
Yes.
would be okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Welcome in this first session on colonialism. I'm sure many of you must have heard, must have read the term colonialism. And in my second session, I'm going to deal with another term, post-colonialism. In Hindi, for colonialism, we call it Upaniveshwad. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So while discussing this term, if you find it problematic, if you don't understand anything, or if you have a question regarding the discussion, please feel free. You can stop me at that point and you can raise your queries. This is first thing. And at the end of the session as well, we can discuss your ideas, and I shall be really glad to have your inputs regarding this discussion. Shall we move
Okay.
ahead then?
Sir, before that, you have taken a topic of colonial and post-colonial literature right
Yes,
now. So, myself, Vaibhav, I just want to ask you one question.
yes.
You said that if you have a question, sir, right now we are in the position of postmodern world. So there has been we are cross the two levels, colonial literature, post-colonial literature. So now I would like to ask this question to you because if it is possible that now it is a decolonized literature would have been right now.
Okay. I'm going to come to that point as well. So,
Maybe that could be the new theory into the literature, decolonized literature.
yes, yes, Dr. Vaibhav, I'm really glad that you have added one important aspect regarding this discussion. I think
Yes, sir.
before we directly go to the notion of decolonization, it would be better if we have a brief introduction kind of discussion about colonialism as well as
Okay, sir.
post-colonialism,
Yes, sir.
neo-colonialism, and then we can at length talk about, or we can discuss the idea of decolonization as well, or decolonialism as well.
Okay, at the end we will discuss, sir.
Okay, okay, fine, fine.
Okay. Okay.
So, as far as colonialism is concerned, the boundaries of colonialism, like those of many literary eras, are really difficult to draw. The history of colonialism as a policy or practice goes back for centuries, and arguably, the story of colonialism is not over yet to some extent. In this way, literature of several ages reflects concerns about colonialism in depictions of encounters with native peoples and foreign landscapes, and in vague allusions to distant plantations. As colonial activity gained momentum in the late 19th century, so the reflection of that activity as a celebration of European might, or as fears of what lay in the wilderness, grew in intensity. In this way, rough foundaries for the literary movement of colonialism would begin in roughly around 1875, when historians date the beginning of new imperialism through the wanderings of First World War and up to the beginning of the Second World War around 1939. Although the years after the First World War reflect primarily nostalgia for an era that was rapidly coming to a close. So, colonialism is primarily a feature of British literature, given that the British dominated the imperial age. Even colonial writers of other nationalities often wrote in English or from So, the literature of colonialism is characterized by a strong sense of ambiguity, uncertainty about the morality of imperialism, about the nature of humanity, and about the continuing viability of European civilization. Perhaps the essential colonial critique is Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Though such works as Oliver Schreiner's Story of an African Farm and E.M. Foster's A Passage to India similarly explore the paradoxes of colonialism. Colonial literature is also full of high adventure, romance, and excitement, as depicted in Rudyard Kipling's thriller novel Kim, or the adventure tales of H. Rider Haggard. Even Isaac Dinsen's memoirs, including Out of Africa, similarly romanticize the wilderness of the colonial landscape and the heroism of adventurous colonizers. I would like to briefly talk about the representative authors, writers of colonial era or colonial period. Of course, I'm sure many of you know very well prominent Polish writer Joseph Conrad. I hope, have you heard this name? Joseph Conrad?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Though considered one of the masters of modern English literature, Conrad was ethnically a Polish writer. He was born in the Ukraine as Joseph Theodore Conrad, but he correctly presumed that Conrad would be a surname more easily pronounced by readers of the English language, in which he wrote. Uh, his works like The Heart of Darkness, Lord Jim, or even Nigger of Narcissus, Nostromo, Under Western Eyes, these are considered as the best examples of colonial literature. So around 1890, Conrad traveled to the Belgian Congo, a difficult trip that provided the background for Conrad's novel Heart of Darkness, which first appeared or published in the form of serial in 1899 to almost 1900. So, A Heart of Darkness is a paradigmatic work not only of colonialist literature but also of modernist literature. Conrad wrote several novels. I have just mentioned those novels, but his works are often widely believed to be highly critical of the colonizers, especially when they are compared to the works of his contemporary writers like Rudyard Kipling. Perhaps Rudyard Kipling was the only author who is as representative of colonialist literature as Conrad himself. Then we have another important representative colonial writer, Isaac Dynson. Isaac Dynson is the pen name adopted by Karen Blixen, who was born as Karen Dynson in 1885. Uh, uh, Dynzen, uh, Dynzen's major works about Africa include Out of Africa, which was published in 1937, and Shadows on the Grass, which was published in 1960, which depict in detail her views of Africa and, in particular, the African people who worked for her on her coffee farm when she spent some time in Africa. One of her short stories on non-colonial theme, Babette's Feast, was made into a major motion picture by Gabriel Axel in 1986, and that film won an Academy Award, Oscar Award for Best Foreign Film as well. Another important representative colonial writer is E.M. Foster. Uh, E.M. Foster, when he was just barely 2 years old, his father died, and afterwards he was taken care by his paternal great aunt and his relatives. He attended several schools in Cambridge, and at a very early age, he was publishing books. Then, significantly, E.M. Foster, he visited India in 1912, and he began writing about his experiences in India in 1914. He visited India again in 1921 when India was much changed by the rise in nationalism following a 1919 attack by British military on Indian civilians. There he worked as a personal secretary for Maharaja. Uh, his important work, A Passage to India, perhaps Foster's last novel, which is often thought to be influenced by the Hindu and nationalist views of India. A Passage to India was such a success that E.M. Foster feared he could not live up to it. And though he continued writing for many years, he never again wrote a full-length novel. He was a member of the Bloomsbury Group. Bloomsbury Group, let me tell you, it was an informal uh, group of writers, artists, and intellectuals, and all of them were associated with modernism. And this group included important writers like Virginia Woolf. So, E.M. Foster was uh, a part of that group and he was influenced by it. Uh, the next important representative colonial writer is H. Rider Haggard. Henry Rider Haggard was a British writer who moved to South Africa at the age of 19, and he worked in the colonial service for at least 5 years before returning to London and pursuing a career in law. He was really inspired by the success of R.L. Stevenson's Treasure Island, and Haggard also began writing adventure novels of his own. Uh, Among his most well-known is King Solomon's Mines, which was published in 1886, which was an immediate commercial success. Its popularity may have been enhanced by the multiple anonymous reviews Haggard wrote with his friend Andrew Lang to promote this book. King Solomon's Mines began a series of South African adventures featuring the white hunter Alan Quatermain. Perhaps Haggard's best-known novel is She, which was published in 1887, and the novel features the character She who must be obeyed, a catchphrase still in use. She is a beautiful but deadly Arab goddess who presents an obstacle to a white adventurer, sometimes considered a prototype of Indiana Jones of the Riders of the Lost Ark films. By the way, I would like to add that this writer Haggard was a friend of Rudyard Kipling and shared many of Kipling's views about native people. Uh, the next representative colonial writer is Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard Kipling was born in Bombay, Mumbai, uh, in 1865. His father was the curator of the Lahore Museum. The setting for, and this Lahore Museum is the setting for the first scene in Rudyard Kipling's novel Kim. Kipling lived with his parents uh, for 5 years until he went to England for schooling. He came back to India in 1882 as a journalist and worked almost 7 to 8 years in the northern part of India. He left India to travel throughout the British colonies, including South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. During those years, he also began publishing short fiction to great success. So again, he returned to England, where he was already a well-known writer. Two of his major works are generally considered as children's literature: The Jungle Book and Kim. Uh, Kim was written during very difficult times in Kipling's life. He nearly died from influenza, and he lost his 7-year-old daughter as well to that disease. Uh, Rudyard Kipling coined the phrase "the white man's burden" as a description of colonialism in 1899 in his poem of the same name, White Man's Burden. This poem echoes the beliefs about race and imperialism that are reflected in most of Kipling's works, which suggest that it is the obligation of white Westerners to bring the primitives of other races into the fold of civilization. Uh, Second last uh, representative author of colonial literature is Catherine Mansfield. By the way, I would like to inform you all that I am taking only a few representative important writers only. I know very well that apart from these writers, there are many other authors or scholars who have contributed to colonial literature with their poems, plays, drama, novels, short stories, etc. So, to get back to the second last representative writer, Catherine Mansfield. Catherine Mansfield is the pseudonym of Kathleen Mansfield Murray. Uh, she was born in America in 1888. Okay. Her first collection of short stories, entitled as In a German Pension, was published in 1911, but it was not very successful. She then sent stories to the magazine called Rhythm and began to correspondence with the editor John Middleton Murray, uh, who published the Woman at the Store. Kathleen Mansfield is also a significant American colonial writer. And the last writer I would like to take is Olive Schreiner. Olive Schreiner was born in South Africa to missionary parents in 1855, and when possible, Schreiner used to return to live with his parents or with his family. But his family's poverty meant she had to return to work. Uh, Schreiner is famous for some important works like the story of an African farm, the story of an African farm was published in 1883, and it was published under the pseudonym of Ralph Iron, and it was really very popular, and it was a great success. Now we are going to take into account some important representative works of colonial literature. I have just mentioned Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness is, in the eyes of many scholars, an essential literary expression of colonialism. In this important work on colonialism, culture and imperialism, Edward Said wrote that Heart of Darkness beautifully captured the imperial attitude in its depiction of Europeans dominating Africans and African resources, and in its sense that there is no alternative to imperialism and thus to colonialism. The Heart of Darkness was first published in the form of serial in 1899 to 1900, and later it was published in the form of book in 1902 as British imperialism was at the climax. This novella is generally understood as an important critique of the evil done in the name of empire. The empire challenged in Heart of Darkness is not the British Empire specifically, set in the Belgian Congo. The story seems to condemn European oppressors, most notably Leopold II of Belgium. Whether doing so was Conrad's intent, this interpretation seems to resonate with the popular British belief that British colonization was benevolent and morally superior to European colonization. The story of Heart of Darkness is told by Marlowe, who is sent to darkest Africa to find out Kurds, an exceptional agent and head of the inner station who is reported to have abandoned every pretense of morality or civilization. The Heart of Darkness in the title itself is thus not strictly Africa, as readers might initially expect, but the heart of a white man who proves capable of incomparable evil. Heart of Darkness is also considered as an example of modernism, with its sometimes unaware narrator, its departure from chronological order, and its questions about the so-called civilized human nature when it remains beyond the constraints of social and civic order. Another important colonial work I would like to mention is Rudyard Kipling's work Kim. Like Heart of Darkness, Kipling's Kim was published at the height of the British Empire in 1901, though it is a very different kind of story. Kim is often considered as children's literature, a spy thriller and coming of age story about a young Irish orphan known as Little Friend to All the World, Kim or Kimball O'Hara. Kimball O'Hara meets and travels with a Buddhist holy man on his spiritual quest, unaware that the British government is using him to obtain important information. In this way, the book explores one aspect of Indian spirituality, that is, Indian Buddhism is a relative of one of the dominant Indian religions, Hinduism, as well as the political struggles of the Indian colony. Kipling was not particularly critical of imperialism, and Kim reflects the belief widely held, particularly prior to the First World War, that the colonization of India was a politically sound act for England as well as a moral obligation for a superior race. If Kim reveals a more optimistic view of the aims of empire than Heart of Darkness, it also belongs to a different type of literature. Though both works are representative of colonialism, Kipling's Kim looks back to the more traditional form of the late Victorian era, which modernist writers very strongly, vehemently rejected. Uh, I have already told you that Deinzen's significant work out of Africa. Now, in the third place, representative work, we are going to briefly talk about Out of Africa, which was published in 1937. British colonialism was waning when this book was released, but the stories recalled by Deinzen capture a wide swath of colonial history from almost 1914 to 1931, and they reflect the ambiguous perspective on British colonial practices that is characteristic of much colonialist literature. Deinzen tells of her failed marriage, her difficulty in making her Kenyan coffee farm economically viable, and her relationships with African natives. As this book covers the period that marks the decline of the British Empire, which began with the First World War in 1914, this book reflects a sense of nostalgia for a lost time and place that infused much late colonial writing. This book was not an immediate success in England, but Deinzen's publisher informed her that the book was popular among many intellectuals throughout the world. The next important, significant example of colonial work or colonial novel is E.M. Foster's A Passage to India, which was published in 1924. This work, A Passage to India, hints at the end of the colonial era in British India and the rise of Indian nationalism. E.M. Foster used his own experiences in India to depict the tense relationship between the British and Indian people, suggesting that even among friends, a truly friendly relationship is difficult to sustain. The title of the novel, A Passage to India, is taken from Walt Whitman's famous poem of the same name, A Passage to India. And in that poem, Whitman questions the value of the British presence in India, but also hopes for unity between East and West. This novel, A Passage to India, tells a complex story of two English women visiting India in the 1920s. And that time was a volatile time after the galvanizing massacre at Amritsar in 1919. And that event sparked the steady increase of Indian nationalism and inspired the political career of Mahatma Gandhi ji. One of the women in this novel, accuses one of her Indian companions of attacking her, fueling the hostility of both local British and Indians, though she later recants. The book is also a story of friendship between an English professor and his Muslim friend, and perhaps this friendship, the idea of friendship must have been inspired by Foster's friendship with his Muslim student Sayyid Ross Masood, to whom he dedicated this novel, A Passage to India. Obviously, the novel was well received and at its publication, and was also adapted to film in 1984. Uh, uh, the discussion about the representative works cannot be complete without mentioning Rudyard Kipling's famous poem, The White Man's Burden. Kipling's poem, The White Man's Burden, was first published in a magazine in 1899, and throughout that year, the poem was republished in several British as well as American magazines and newspapers as well. Uh, there was a debate about this poem. In this poem, Kipling encourages white people to go out to their colonies and establish civilization there for the benefit of sullen natives living in darkness. So, in a way, Kipling was promoting colonialism or colonial mindset. Kipling repeatedly emphasizes the lack of gratitude white colonizers must accept as part of their burden, claiming that native sloth and hidden folly will often counteract European works of civilization, and that colonizers can expect to be hated by those they free from the bondage of their loved Egyptian knight. This poem was especially influential in America as well, where it appeared many times as the country was about to enter its own imperialist period by taking control of Puerto Rico, Philippines, and Cuba. Anti-imperialists also latched onto the poem, publishing immediate parodies suggesting the hypocrisy of the notion of white man's burden. By the way, please remember the phrase white man's burden, and this phrase became a kind of slogan for those people on each side of the imperialist debate. Okay. Uh, I would like to take one more example of colonial literature, the story of an African farm by Olive Schreiner. Schreiner's novel, The Story of an African Farm, published in 1883, was among the first major novels of the colonialist era. Schreiner was the daughter of missionaries in South Africa, though after her father was found guilty of violating trading regulations, she was largely left to fend for herself. She worked as a governess on African farms, educating herself with the works of Charles Darwin, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Thomas Carlyle while working on her first novel. She went to England in 1881 and worked 2 years to find a publisher for the story of an African farm. The novel was a great success, though it was at last one she published in her lifetime. Her later writings were works of political non-fiction, but in the novel, The Story of an African Farm, Schreiner states rather modern views about women's role in colonial society, a theme that was also common to the writings of women missionaries during the colonial era. Now, after discussing a few important works of colonial literature, I would like to take your attention to major, important, or as we can say, significant themes of colonial period, colonial literature. The first important theme is the theme of imperialism and empire. Attention to the aims and ends of imperialism is a repeated theme of colonialist literature. As a political term, imperialism refers to the policy. Yes.
हाँ सर, एक रिक्वेस्ट थी सर, थोड़ा हिंदी में भी हमें एक्सप्लेन
हाँ,
करके
शुरू।
बताइए।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, ठीक है, ठीक।
ओके सर, थैंक यू सर।
Okay, let me finish this theme and then we'll talk in Hindi. जबकि मेरी हिंदी इतनी अच्छी नहीं है, लेकिन मैं कोशिश करूंगा कि हिंदी में भी कॉलोनियलिज्म, उपनिवेशवाद के बारे में कुछ कह सकूं। ओके,
ओके, थैंक यू सर।
ठीक ठीक, बिल्कुल। So uh, I was talking about the theme of imperialism in colonialist literature. Though Europeans had participated in imperialist activity for centuries, in the late 19th century, imperial powers, including England, France, Belgium, and Germany, began competing very fiercely to increase their colonies. And the result was very obvious, high level of aggressiveness and greater degree of intrusion into previously independent areas. In addition to economic motives, imperialism was also fueled uh, by a widely held self-justifying belief that superior white race of Europe should bring civilization to the less developed peoples of color living on other continents. Colonialist literature both affirms and critiques this belief, often at the same time in keeping with the ambivalence of even the most sympathetic Europeans. Dickens's Out of Africa, for example, has been praised for its positive portrayal of Africans, even as it has been condemned as the work of a racist. Such conflicting readings can exist because the book, like many other works of colonialism, contains both ideas. कॉलोनियलिज्म हिंदी में इस शब्द के लिए हिंदी में उपनिवेशवाद कहा जाता है। सो कॉलोनियलिज्म के बारे में उपनिवेशवाद एक ऐसी ऐतिहासिक और राजनीतिक प्रक्रिया है जिसके अंतर्गत किसी शक्तिशाली राष्ट्र द्वारा किसी अन्य भौगोलिक क्षेत्र, समाज अथवा राष्ट्र पर राजनीतिक, आर्थिक, सांस्कृतिक और वैचारिक नियंत्रण स्थापन किया जाता है। यह केवल भू आधिपत्य की प्रक्रिया नहीं है, बल्कि सत्ता, ज्ञान और संस्कृति के माध्यम से वर्चस्व स्थापित करने की एक बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स, जटिल प्रणाली है। उपनिवेशवाद आधुनिक विश्व इतिहास की सबसे निर्णायक और विनाशकारी प्रक्रियाओं में से एक रहा है, जिसने एशिया, अफ्रीका और इवन लैटिन अमेरिका के समाजों की संरचनाओं को गहरे स्तर पर प्रभावित किया है। राजनीतिक दृष्टि से उपनिवेशवाद का उद्देश्य उपनिवेशित क्षेत्र पर प्रत्यक्ष या अप्रत्यक्ष शासन स्थापित करने का था। यूरोपीय देश, यूरोपियन कंट्रीज, यूरोपियन शक्तियों जैसे कि ब्रिटेन, फ्रांस, स्पेन, पोर्तुगाल, नेदरलैंड्स और अन्य यूरोपियन शक्तियां, इन सभी ने सैन्य बल, प्रशासनिक ढांचों और कानूनी प्रणालियों के माध्यम से अपने उपनिवेशों को नियंत्रित किया। और मुझे लगता है इन व्यवस्थाओं का प्रातिनिधिक प्राइमरी मुख्य लक्ष्य स्थानीय सत्ता संरचनाओं को कमजोर करना और औपनिवेशिक हितों के अनुरूप शासन प्रणाली लागू करना था। तो इसका रिजल्ट, परिणाम बहुत आसान और सिंपल है हमें समझने में। इसका परिणाम स्वरूप उपनिवेशित समाजों में स्वायत्तता और लोकतांत्रिक चेतना का दमन हुआ था। आर्थिक स्तर पर उपनिवेशवाद का मूल स्वरूप शोषणकारी था। उपनिवेशों को कच्चे माल के स्रोत, सोर्सेस और प्रोडक्ट, तैयार माल के बाजार के रूप में विकसित किया गया था। इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन, शायद आप सभी लोग जानते होंगे कि इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन, दैट इज क्या बोलते हैं उसे, औद्योगिक क्रांति। औद्योगिक क्रांति से जिनको भी लाभ हुआ, जैसे कि यूरोपियन राष्ट्रों को, उन्होंने उपनिवेशित अर्थव्यवस्थाओं को एक पक्षीय रूप से अपने हितों के कंट्रोल में अधीन कर लिया था। एग्रीकल्चर, बिजनेस, क्या बोलते हैं उसे, कृषि, उद्योग, व्यापार, इन सब चीजों की पारंपरिक प्रणालियां एक तरफ से नष्ट हुई, जिससे स्थानीय समाजों में गरीबी, बेरोजगारी और आर्थिक असमानता बढ़ गई। भारत में स्थायी बंदोबस्त, खेती और औद्योगिक डिटोरियोरेशन, क्या उसे हम कह सकते हैं, औद्योगिक डिटेरियोरेशन, औद्योगिक पतन, इसके प्रमुख उदाहरण है। सांस्कृतिक और वैचारिक स्तर पर उपनिवेशवाद ने गहरा प्रभाव डाला। औपनिवेशिक शक्तियों ने अपनी भाषा, शिक्षा पद्धति, धर्म और जीवन मूल्यों को उन्नत और सभ्य के रूप में प्रस्तुत किया, जबकि स्थानीय संस्कृतियों को पिछड़ा और अविकसित ठहराया गया। इस प्रक्रिया को सभ्य बनाने के मिशन के रूप में वैध ठहराया गया, वो बिल्कुल सही ठहराया गया। In English, we can call it the mission of civilization. तो एज अ रिजल्ट, फलस्वरूप उपनिवेशित समाजों में सांस्कृतिक हीनता, इंफीरियोरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स, सांस्कृतिक हीनता बोध उत्पन्न हुआ और आत्म पहचान संकटग्रस्त हो गया। ज्ञान और इतिहास लेखन में भी उपनिवेशवाद के महत्वपूर्ण औजार है। औपनिवेशिक इतिहासकारों और विद्वानों ने उपनिवेशित समाजों के इतिहास, साहित्य और परंपराओं को अपने दृष्टिकोण से परिभाषित करने की कोशिश की। इससे एक ऐसा ज्ञानतंत्र विकसित हुआ जिसने औपनिवेशिक सत्ता को स्वाभाविक और अपरिहार्य के रूप में प्रस्तुत किया। आप सभी लोग मिशेल फूको का नाम तो जानते होंगे। मिशेल फूको के सत्ता ज्ञान संबंध के सिद्धांत के आलोक में यह स्पष्ट होता है कि उपनिवेशवाद केवल बल प्रयोग नहीं, बल्कि वैचारिक वर्चस्व की भी प्रणाली है और था। उपनिवेशवाद के विरुद्ध प्रतिरोध भी निरंतर विकसित होता रहा। राजनीतिक आंदोलनों के साथ साथ साहित्य, कला और संस्कृति के माध्यम से भी औपनिवेशिक सत्ता को चुनौती दी गई। भारत में भी राष्ट्रीय आंदोलन, अफ्रीका में भी मुक्ति संघर्ष और लैटिन अमेरिका में भी क्रांतिकारी आंदोलनों ने उपनिवेशवाद की वैधता पर अनेक प्रश्न चिन्ह उठाए। साहित्य में ये जो आलोचना और इसका प्रतिरोध कई सारे लेखकों ने किया है, जैसे कि रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर जी है, प्रेमचंद, और इवन इन अदर कंट्रीज राइटर्स लाइक चिनुआ अचेबे और एनगुगी वा थियांगो, ऐसे कई सारे लेखकों ने अपने लिटरेचर के माध्यम से एक्सप्रेशन, क्या बोलते हैं, सेल्फ एक्सप्रेशन, अभिव्यक्ति करने की कोशिश की। आलोचनात्मक दृष्टि से उपनिवेशवाद को मानवाधिकारों, सामाजिक न्याय और सांस्कृतिक बहुलता के विरुद्ध माना जाता है। इसने उपनिवेशित समाजों में वर्गीय, दैट इज क्लास, नस्लीय, दैट इज रेस, और लैंगिक, दैट इज जेंडर, असमानताओं को गहरा किया। इसके अतिरिक्त स्वतंत्रता के बाद भी अनेक देशों में नव उपनिवेशवाद, न्यू कॉलोनियलिज्म के रूप में आर्थिक और सांस्कृतिक निर्भरता बनी रही, जिससे यह स्पष्ट होता है कि उपनिवेशवाद की विरासत अभी समाप्त नहीं हुई है एक अर्थ से। क्या हम ऐसा कह सकते हैं कि उपनिवेशवाद एक बहुआयामी और दमनकारी व्यवस्था रही है, जिसने वर्ल्ड लिटरेचर और वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री, विश्व इतिहास, साहित्य और संस्कृति को गहरे रूप में प्रभावित किया। इसका आलोचनात्मक अध्ययन न केवल अतीत के अन्यायों को समझने में सहायता है, बल्कि वर्तमान वैश्विक सत्ता संरचनाओं को और असमानताओं को समझने और पहचानने के लिए भी वो आवश्यक है। इस प्रकार उपनिवेशवाद, कोलोनियलिज्म का विमर्श हमें इतिहास को पुनः पढ़ने और साहित्य के माध्यम से अधिक न्यायपूर्ण विश्व की संकल्पना करने में की दिशा में प्रेरित करता है। I hope I am able to address a few issues in Hindi as well. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. चलो फिर अगला एक इम्पोर्टेंट थीम, हम कॉलोनियल लिटरेचर के बारे में जो बात कर रहे थे, उसमें एक लेते हैं नेशनल आइडेंटिटी. आई एम श्योर all of you know what is meant by national identity. Colonial practices redefined national boundaries. As the British Empire grew, it came to draw its boundaries over a larger and larger portion of the globe. And at its greatest, it controlled almost 1/4 of the globe. While this control was a source of English pride, it was also a threat to British national identity. If Indians, Africans, and inhabitants of the West and East Indies were British subjects, were they also British? And if not, what constituted British national identity? Colonial authors sometimes depict British colonists clinging to British Moors, and in Catherine Mansfield's short stories, or even E.M. Foster's A Passage to India. Other writers, such as Rudyard Kipling, appear more confident, using exotic portrayals of primitives and their customs to suggest an inherent, unbridgeable difference between the colonizers and the colonized. Some authors also explored the possibility of going native, which was sometimes considered an abasement, sometimes a mark of increased nobility. This theme of national identity is hinted at in Lord Jim, in Heart of Darkness, and even in Kim, among other works. I would like to take the third important theme of colonialist literature, and that is very significant and important one, the theme of race. How writers, not only from colonies but also from the dominant nations, considered or looked at race from their perspectives. The theme of race. No white colonial author has escaped the charge of racism, in large part because of the totalizing nature of the imperialist worldview that maintained white European superiority, whether biological or cultural in nature. Even Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which is widely believed to be highly critical of imperialist policies and practices, cannot envision a worldview outside imperialism, and one of the foundations of imperialism is an abiding belief in racial difference. Kipling provided a straightforward articulation of these beliefs in his poem The White Man's Burden, which suggests that whites were under a moral obligation to educate, civilize, and Christianize the darker races, or even to care for them as their stronger protectors. By contrast, Foster's A Passage to India depicts Indians as professionals and intellectuals, although the novel closes by suggesting that the differences between Indians and Europeans are too great to be bridged, even by the most well-meaning individuals in either culture. So, this is something interesting about the themes. Now, I would like to move further, and I would like to take your attention to the setting of the colonialist literature, because that is also one of the important aspects of colonial literature. Colonialist literature was consistently set in the colonies. From a European point of view, colonial territory was singular. Colonized land and people all fell in the category of other, even for the Europeans living in the colonies. Politically, geographically, and culturally, however, the colonies were widely different. For example, England's relationship with India began with the spice trade in the 16th century. But England did not venture into the African interior until the 19th century. India built sophisticated cities that would have been unfamiliar to tribal Africans in rural areas, as would be the ports of Cape Town. In this way, Conrad's view of colonialism from the Belgian Congo would necessarily be different from that of Kipling's or Foster's, not only because of their philosophical differences, but because of the different geographical backgrounds from which they drew. I would like to also talk about narration in colonialist literature. Narration. Though there is not a particular narrative style for colonialist literature, the perspective of the narrator and the mode of narration is an important aspect of style in fiction written during the colonialist movement. To some extent, this feature is relevant to the literary movement of modernism, which broke up seemingly stable functions of literature such as point of view, narrator, and even plot. Thus, the narrators of Conrad's novels are not necessarily reliable sources of information, nor are they the central focus of the novel or a center for interpreting the action of the novel. The fragmented narration of characters such as Marlowe highlights the political and ethical chaotic situation of European colonization. More broadly, however, the narrative perspective of much colonialist literature gives subject status only to white colonizers, as if it were impossible to relate to the colonized as anything but object. Fundamental to imperialism, this perspective reflects the tacit belief that Europe is central and dominant, and the rest of the world is peripheral and dominated. Another small aspect which I would like to deal with, and then we'll take a break. The last aspect is autobiography. The colonial experience brought forth a flood of memoirs and autobiographies of colonialists eager to share their experiences and observations with friends and family at home. In particular, this was a way that many women were able to publish respectably, and several women produced memoirs, journals, and collections of correspondence from their travels or missionary work. Many of these were widely and eagerly read at time, though modern readers mostly value them as historical documents. Out of Africa is notably exception, though it shares several qualities of travel and missionary writing. With such works, the authority given to the writer's observations and opinions as part of a true story was high. Victorian and Edwardian readers admired missionaries and adventuring colonists and formed their opinions about colonized people through these texts. Yet, as many readers of her works have marked, Dinesen portrayed the African landscape and people in terms of her memory and nostalgia, as well as her necessarily limited European perspective. In writing a book of literature, Dinesen crafts a story out of events that may or may not have a direct relation to each other. Though not autobiographical works, the same could be said of Catherine Mansfield's stories, drawn as they were from distant childhood memories. Okay. So, in this way, हमने अभी उपनिवेशवाद को समझने की और उसको उनके उपनिवेशवाद के कई सारे एस्पेक्ट्स को आलोचनात्मक दृष्टि से समझने की कोशिश की है, प्रयास किया है। तो मुझे लगता है कि ये कॉलोनियलिज्म के बारे में जो भी मुझे कहना था वो मेरा कहना हो गया है। अभी नेक्स्ट सेशन में, ये ब्रेक के बाद जब हम मिलेंगे, तब हम पोस्ट कॉलोनियलिज्म, उत्तर औपनिवेशिकता और उत्तर औपनिवेशिकवाद के बारे में आलोचनात्मक दृष्टि से चर्चा करेंगे, उसके बारे में इस टर्म को समझने की कोशिश करेंगे. I would like to take a few important representative works as well as important writers of post-colonialism in the next session. तो क्या हम ब्रेक ले सकते हैं अभी? 10 मिनट, 5 मिनट?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then it's almost 12:20. So can we meet again at 12:30?
Yes, sure, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
रिमाइंडर टाका सर आवाज येत नाही.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
हा
हाँ
सर
सर
आवाज
येतोय आवाज.
yes sir audible sir.
ओके ओके ओके। तो शुरू करें हम।
यस सर
ओके
Yes,
ओके। अभी ब्रेक के बाद हम बात करेंगे पोस्ट कॉलोनियलिज्म के बारे में। पोस्ट कॉलोनियलिज्म जैसा मैंने पहले सेशन के एंड में कहा, उसे हम उत्तर औपनिवेशिकवाद भी कह सकते हैं। उसके बारे में कुछ बातें करेंगे और वी विल डिस्कस पोस्ट कॉलोनियलिज्म। In this session, I am going to once again deal with a few important representative writers as well as their representative works. The term post-colonialism refers broadly to the ways in which race, ethnicity, culture, and human identity itself are represented in the modern era after many colonized countries gained their independence. However, some critics use the term to refer to all culture and cultural products influenced by imperialism from the moment of colonization until the 21st century. Post-colonial literature seeks to describe the interactions between European nations and the peoples they colonized. By the middle of the 20th century, the vast majority of the world was under the control of European countries. At its peak in the late 19th century, according to the Norton Anthology of English Literature, the British Empire considered more than a quarter of all the territory on the surface of the earth. 1 in 4 people was a subject of Queen Victoria. During the 20th century, countries such as India, Jamaica, Nigeria, Senegal, Canada, and Australia won independence from their European colonizers. The literature and art produced in these countries after independence became the subject of post-colonial studies, an area of academic concentration initially in many British universities as well as in the rest of the world. This field gained prominence in the 1970s and has been developing ever since. Palestinian American scholar Edward Said, I'm sure many of you must have heard this name. आप में से कई लोगों ने एडवर्ड सईद का नाम तो सुना ही होगा.
yes, sir.
Can anybody tell me the title of his famous work? Edward Said's.
Orient,
That's right. Orientalism.
Orientalism.
That's right. Edward Said's critique of Western representations of the Eastern culture in his important, very significant book, Orientalism, is a seminal text for post-colonial studies and has spawned a host of theories on this subject. However, as the currency of the term post-colonial gained wider use. Its meaning was expanded. Some consider the United States of America itself a post-colonial country because its former status as a territory of Great Britain, but it is generally studied for its colonizing rather than its colonized attributes. In another vein, Canada and Australia, though former colonies of Britain, are often placed in a separate category because of their status as settler countries and because of their continuing membership in the British Commonwealth of Nations. Some of the major voices and works of post-colonial literature are Salman Rushdie's novel Midnight's Children, Chinua Achebe's novel Things Fall Apart, Michael Ondaatje's novel The English Patient, Franz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, Jamaica Kincaid's A Small Place, Isabel Allende's The House of the Spirits, J.M. Coetzee's Waiting for the Barbarians and Disgrace, Derek Walcott's Omeros, and Ivan Boland's Outside History selected poems. Now, we will briefly talk about the representative authors of post-colonial literature. Once again, I'm sure you must have heard the name Chinua Achebe. Nigerian writer. Although his parents were Christian, converted from their native religion, Chinua Achebe began to write fiction while attending university, and his first novel, Things Fall Apart, garnered him international acclaim as well as criticism. Drawing in his Igbo and Christian backgrounds, Chinua Achebe writes about the tensions between the people and values of the native Igbo and the Christian colonizers. Achebe writes in English, which some argue is the language of colonizers. In the late 1960s, he became involved in Nigerian politics for a few years, but frustration over corruption made him quit politics and move to the United States for some time. He lived and worked at universities in Nigeria and the United States of America for more than 30 years. His other books include the non-fiction and collection of essays like Home and Exile, collected poems, and I hope many of you know very well that he was awarded the Man Booker Prize also in 2007 for his literary achievement. Another representative author is J.M. Coetzee. He was South African writer. Coetzee completed his BA, Bachelor of Arts degree in 1960 from the University of Cape Town, and MA, Master of Fine Arts, in 1963, and he also received his PhD in English from the University of Texas at Austin. As a white writer living in South Africa during apartheid, Coetzee developed powerful imperialist feelings. His novels, deeply influenced by postmodern ideas of representation and language, illustrate the insidious ways in which dominant groups seek to impose their culture and thinking on conquered people. For example, his first novel, Dusklands, tells two distinct but parallel stories. One of the workings of the United States State Department during the Vietnam War, and the other, Jacobus Coetzee's conquest of South Africa in the 1760s. Coetzee's own alienation from his fellow Afrikaners is evident in his novels, most of which focus on the thoughts and actions of a single character put in an untenable situation. Coetzee's Booker Prize winning novel, The Life and Times of Michael Kay, set in racially divided Cape Town, tells the story of gardener Michael Kay, who, after taking his dying mother to the farm on which she was raised, lives happily until he is accused by the government of aiding guerrillas. Coetzee's early novels are not polemical, rather, they are allegorical, underscoring the timeless nature of human cruelty. Coetzee's other novels include From the Heart of the Country, Waiting for the Barbarians, Age of Iron, The Master of Petersburg, and Disgrace, for which he received his second Booker Prize. In addition to the Booker Prizes, Coetzee has been awarded many prestigious awards like James Tite Black Memorial Prize, the Faber Memorial Award, the Jerusalem Prize, and so many other awards. But significantly, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2003. Another philosopher and important figure as far as post-colonial discourse is concerned is Frantz Fanon. Uh, uh, Frantz Fanon was born in 1925 in the French colony, but he left it in 1943 to fight with the Free French in the Second World War. Fanon was a psychiatrist and he was interested in the emotional effects of racism and colonization on blacks. Fanon considered himself French, but his experience as a black man in France caused him to rethink his ideas about culture and identity. In 1952, he published a book called Black Skin, White Masks. Originally, it was entitled as an essay for the disalienation of blacks. With the publication of his another important book, The Wretched of the Earth, it was published in 1961, Fanon established himself as a leading critic of colonial power and a voice for violent revolution. As head of the psychiatry department in a hospital in Algeria, Fanon saw firsthand the kind of psychological damage done to the tortured and the tortures during the Algerian War for independence. Fanon resigned his post and worked openly with the Algerian independence movement in Tunisia. He was an important influence on thinkers such as Jean-Paul Sartre, Homi Bhabha, and also Edward Said. The next important figure is Jamaica Kincaid. Jamaica Kincaid was born in 1949 and he was educated in Britain's school system of the colony. In 1967, Antigua achieved self-governance and maybe around 1980s, it became an independent country of the Commonwealth. Kincaid moved to New York City, where she studied photography at the New York School for Social Research and began writing for magazines, including The New Yorker, The Ingenue, etc. Much of Kincaid's writing displays her disdain for all things English and the inability of native Antiguans to resist British cultural imperialism. In her book about Antigua, the title of the book is A Small Place. Kincaid describes the island like this. Antigua is a small place, a small island. It was settled by Christopher Columbus in 1493. Not too long after, it was settled by human rubbish from Europe, who used enslaved but noble and exalted human beings from Africa to satisfy their desire for wealth and power, to feel better about their own miserable existence, so that they could be less lonely and empty, a European disease. She called it a European disease. In addition to A Small Place, Kincaid published a number of novels, including Annie John, At the Bottom of the River, The Autobiography of My Mother, My Brother, Mr. Potter, a novel, etc. Kincaid writes about women's experiences with other women and the effects of colonialism and patriarchy on women's self-image. The next significant post-colonial writer is Lee Young Lee. Lee Young Lee is one of the leading poetic voices of the Chinese diaspora writing in the United States of America. A profound sense of loss and nostalgia and a questing for and questioning of one's national or ethnic identity often characterize diasporic writing. Lee was born in Jakarta in 1957. Her father, grandfather, let's say, was China's provisional president, and he was elected in 1912 during the country's transition from monarchy to republic. With the publication of her his first collection of poems, Rose, Lee garnered widespread attention from critics who were moved by the mix of tenderness, fear, and longing in his portraits of his family. Next important figure is Salman Rushdie, and I'm sure almost all of you must have heard this name. Uh, 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 Salman Rushdie was born into a prosperous Muslim family in India in 1947, and he was raised in a liberal atmosphere in which education was very valued. His parents, I mean, his father was a Cambridge scholar, and his mother was a teacher from Aligarh. And they later on migrated. She was migrated from Kashmir before Salman Rushdie was born. Uh, at a very early age, Salman Rushdie decided that uh, he wanted to be a writer. So he attended school in England and enrolled uh, in a college in Cambridge. When before independence, after graduation, when Salman Rushdie moved to Karachi to join his family, who had moved there in 1964. In Karachi, Salman Rushdie wrote advertising copy by day and worked on his fiction at night. His major success as a writer was his novel Midnight's Children, which won the prestigious Booker Prize in 1981 and brought Rushdie international fame. Weaving personal experience with history, Rushdie traces Indian history from 1910 until 1976. His another novel, Shame, which was a satire of the Pakistani elite, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. In 1988, Rushdie published his well-known work, The Satanic Verses, calling this book blasphemous. Many governments banned this novel, and Muslims throughout the world protested. Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran's spiritual leader, declared a judicial decree known as a fatwa, sentencing Salman Rushdie to death. So Rushdie immediately went into hiding. The Iranian government withdrew fatwa almost at the end of the last century against Rushdie, but it was renewed by Khamenei in 2005. Rushdie continued to write, exploring the intersections of history, culture, religion, and identity. In 2005, he published Shalimar the Clown, and he published many other works. But significantly, he was awarded a knighthood for his contributions to literature by Queen Elizabeth II in 2007. The next important representative writer is Michael Ondaatje. He was born in Sri Lanka, Ceylon. Michael Ondaatje was is a novelist, critic, and poet. But Ondaatje's is best known for his 1992 novel, The English Patient, which deals with the interactions of the characters of various nationalities during the last days of the Second World War. And the novel explores the relationships between past and present, individual and national identity, and how those relationships shape a person's idea of home. This novel, The English Patient, was also adapted into an internationally acclaimed film, maybe at the end of the century. And Ondaji has received a number of awards for his writing. Uh, um, he was awarded the Canada Australia Prize, the Booker Prize, etc. The last name, which I must state, is Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak. Gayatri Spivak is one of the leading theories of post-colonial literary theory. She was born in Calcutta in 1942. Spivak's scholarly research work she began her academic career was launched after she translated Jacques Derrida's Of Grammatology into English, and she wrote its preface. In addition to her work on Derrida, Spivak has authored a number of critical books, texts, and edited number of collection of essays, especially a critique of post-colonial reason, the death of a discipline, and other Asias. Okay. No doubt, Ngugi wa Thiong'o is also one of the important figures, and we can briefly talk about this work as well as the representative work of post-colonial literature, decolonizing the mind. Ngugi wa Thiong'o was a Kenyan writer, and his work, Decolonizing the Mind, is part memoir, part treatise, describing the storytelling traditions of his people and the ways in which British colonial educational system attempted to eradicate Gikuyu language and culture, effectively colonizing the minds of native Kenyans. Thiong'o writes, he says, I believe that my writing in Gikuyu, an African language, is part and parcel of the anti-imperialist struggles of Kenyan and African people. I have already mentioned one important work by J.M. Coetzee, Disgrace. Disgrace is a novel by famous writer J.M. Coetzee, and this novel was published in 1999. This novel is set in Cape Town, South Africa, and explores the themes of racial justice, crime, revenge, and land rights in post-apartheid South Africa. Apartheid refers to the 317 laws enacted by Dr. D.F. Malan's Nationalist Party in the late 1940s and the early 1950s. These laws legally strengthened already existing racial segregation and economic, political, and social domination by whites. The plot revolves around David Lurie, a divorced white university professor expelled from his school for sexual harassment. Shortly after, Lurie moves to the country farm of his lesbian daughter, Lucy. Local blacks rape her. The story concerns Lurie's response to that incident. Coetzee received his Booker Prize for the novel, and I would like to add that a film based on Disgrace, starring significant actors like John Malkovich, was released in 2008. Michael Ondaatje's novel, The English Patient, also explores many of the primary themes of post-colonial discourse, including the intersections between individual and national identity and how the dialogue between the two shape consciousness. This novel is set in a villa in Florence and follows the lives of a young woman and three men, all from different countries, as they revolve around the badly burned English patient who lies dying in an upstairs room. This novel was also adapted into an internationally acclaimed film in at the end of 20th century. Salman Rushdie's Booker Award winning novel Midnight's Children views his personal history into the history of India using a narrator, Salim Sinai, who was born in 1947, the year of Rushdie's birth and India's independence. Rushdie employs a number of narrative devices, including Hindu storytelling, magic realism, and a style analogous to the Bombay talkie, a type of Indian film, to underscore how difficult it is to write history and to show the many opportunities that independence offered the country, many of which have been squandered. Midnight's Children secured Rushdie's reputation as a writer of international stature, but Rushdie is also offended uh, uh, many Indians for depicting Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India, as a tyrant. Rushdie revised the novel and apologized. His another novel, The Satanic Verses, brought Rushdie even more trouble, as Muslim fundamentalists considered the novel blasphemous of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad. The Indian government banned the book. Mass protests against it sprung up around the world, and I have already mentioned that how Ayatollah Khomeini, the spiritual leader of the Iranian revolution, issued a fatwa, and later on it was uh, uh, cancelled. Then I would like to briefly talk about one significant novel by Leslie Marmon Silku. The title of the novel is Ceremony, published in 1977. This novel, Ceremony, is widely considered to be one of the most important works of Native American literature. Silku's novel celebrates the traditions and myths of the Laguna Pueblo people while examining the influence of white contact on Pueblo storytelling. As a people who continue to live under a form of colonial rule, yet who have achieved a degree of autonomy, Native Americans occupy a special place in post-colonial discourse. Okay. The second last work, Lee Young Lee's collection of poems, published in 1986, and the title of the anthology is Rose. This anthology provides a glimpse into the consciousness of the Chinese diaspora. Lee, whose parents emigrated from China to Indonesia and then with their family to the United States of America, and his poems, though deeply personal and full of family history, show the devastating emotional and psychological effects that forced immigration has on both families and individuals. The atmosphere of silence in Lee's poems illustrates the writer's own shame in his inability to speak the language of his new country. The last book which I would like to take is The Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. In her book, A Small Place, Jamaica Kincaid draws on her personal experience of growing up on the British island colony of Antigua to express her contempt for the ways in which British colonialism destroyed her country. In particular, she focuses on the British educational system and how it attempted to turn Antiguans into English. Kincaid also reserves for Antiguans themselves for their willingness to adopt the worst of British culture and ignore the best. She describes the country both before and after independence, suggesting that in some ways the country has been worse off since it became self-governing. The last book which we cannot forget and we cannot afford to not to discuss is Chinua Achebe's novel Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart is set in Africa at the turn of the 20th century, and this novel explores the interaction between traditional African society and British colonialism. The protagonist of the novel, Okonkwo, a member of the Igbo tribe, struggles to understand and adjust to the changes brought by British control and Christianity. As of the early 2000s, more than 8 million copies of this novel had been sold worldwide, and it had been translated into more than 50 languages. Things Fall Apart is also regularly included in academic courses in literature, history, philosophy, etc. In 1959, Chinua Achebe was awarded uh, Margaret Memorial Prize for this novel. And Chinua Achebe's another novel, Ant Hills of the Savannah, examines the post-independence condition of a fictional West African country, showing how the legacies of colonialism continue to undermine the possibility for the country to unite. Now, I think we should spare some time to discuss a few important, major, very significant themes in post-colonial literature. And obviously, the first theme is the theme of race or racism. Racial discrimination is a theme that runs throughout post-colonial discourse, as white Europeans consistently emphasized their superiority over darker-skinned people. This was most evident in South Africa, whose policy of apartheid was institutionalized in national laws. These laws included the Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act and the Immorality Act, which prohibited sexual intercourse and marriage between whites and blacks. The Groups Areas Act limited black access to areas exclusively reserved for whites. The only blacks permitted in these areas were workers who first had to apply for state permission. The Population Registration Act categorized Africans into racial groups, which were based upon a person's appearance, education, and manners. Perhaps the most insidious of the apartheid laws were the Bantu Authorities Act and the Abolition of Passes and Coordination of Documents Act. The Abolition of Passes, the Bantu Authorities Act relegated all Africans to their native lands and laid the groundwork for the denationalization of black and colored Africans. The Abolition of Passes and Coordination of Documents Act required all Africans to carry identity cards or papers containing a photograph, fingerprints, and work history. Strict penalties were meted out if a person could not produce a passbook or passport. The fiction of Nadine Gordimer and James Coetzee, both white South Africans, shows how apartheid devastated the country morally, emotionally, and economically. Coetzee's characters are often privileged whites who are forced to acknowledge the material and psychological harm that apartheid has caused black Africans. So, in short, racism is a primary theme in the writings of Derek Walcott, Jamaica Kincaid, Franz Fanon, and many other writers as well. The next important aspect of post-colonial literature is the language. In occupied countries, colonizers often controlled their subjects through imposing their own language upon them and forbidding them to speak their mother tongue. Educational systems enforced this imposed restriction. Post-colonial writers address the issue of language in various ways. Some writers, like Derek Walcott, Danticut, mix the languages imposed upon on them with their indigenous language, creating a hybrid tongue that underscores the fractured nature of the colonized mind. Other writers, such as Ngugi wa Thiong'o, turned away from English to write exclusively in Gikuyu language. Ngugi wa Thiong'o argues that continued use of English only helps Africans to forget their own pre-colonial past. Yet, another approach to language is Marman Silko's, who in ceremony intersperse a conventional Anglophone narrative with Indian folk legends to create a novel that underscores how Native Americans have to create a coherent whole out of disparate ways of seeing, describing, and being in the world. Some critics worry that the post-colonial works studied in many universities are chosen for their postmodern style rather than for the ways in which they describe the real world operation of people from former colonies. The next important aspect of post-colonial discourse is the issue of identity. The issue of identity. In their desire to reclaim a past that had been taken from them, post-colonial writers often address the question of identity, either implicitly or explicitly in their work. However, doing so often requires using the language of the colonizers, which in itself complicates the drive to become the person they thought they were or should have become. The inability to return to a past now gone forever is a consequence of the notion of hybridity. Hybridity refers to the admixture of practices and signs from the colonizing and colonized cultures. It is a central fact of the post-colonial experience, and it is evident in almost all post-colonial texts. Colonizers are as much a part of the colonized as the colonized are of the colonizers. This cross-fertilization of cultures can be positive as well as dangerous, and writers often show an ambivalent attitude towards this phenomenon. Hybridity challenges the idea that a person or a country has any essential, uncontaminated, or unchanging identity, and that the desire to reclaim such an identity is rooted in an impossible nostalgia. This idea raises issues such as whether or not a colonized people can avoid adopting a colonist's behavior and attitude. Jamaica Kincaid describes this phenomenon uh, in uh, in a book, A Small Place, showing how Antiguans have become anglicized in their thinking. The idea of hybridity also challenges representations of colonized people seen in descriptions such as black consciousness or Indian soul, and the notion that they are all the same. Totalizing the descriptions like these deny the difference among colonized people as well as reinforce the constructed difference between them and their colonizers. Danticut's character called Sophie, for example, struggles to understand her own identity in the welter of language and culture into which she was born and through which she moves. Her migration to New York City further complicates her understanding of who she is, as she must now also come to grips with a diasporic Haitian culture, which is itself in flux. Once again, as far as the stylistic feature of post-colonial discourse or literature is concerned, setting plays significant role in post-colonial literature. Setting refers to time, place, and culture in which the action of the story takes place. Features include geographic location, characters, physical and mental environments, cultural attitudes, or the historical time of the action. The setting for post-colonial literature varies from country to country, writer to writer, although a good many of the novels are set after the countries have declared their independence from their European colonizers, like Great Britain, for example. Once again, Kincaid's small plays can be taken as the classic example for this setting. Kincaid's small plays chronicles life after Antigua won the right to self-governance, and even James Coetzee's novel Disgrace is set in a post-apartheid South Africa when the power relations between whites and blacks are shifting. So my point here is that the setting in post-colonial literature has a significant place, and most of the post-colonial writers have used setting after getting independence for their countries. And this is very this transitory phase is really crucial for them. The next aspect of post-colonial literature is narration. Once again, narration refers to how a series of events is told. The mode of narration is deeply intertwined with the author's style and subject matter. Some post-colonial novels are narrated in a relatively straightforward manner in which events are recounted chronologically. However, many post-colonial works adopt a postmodern approach to storytelling. Postmodern narration, in this sense, refers to the use of different points of view, multiple narrators, and blending of styles and genres to describe events and action. Salman Rushdie employs a kind of postmodern narration in his Midnight Children. Similarly, Danticut in his Breath, Eyes, Memory also employs the similar kind of technique. Even Silko's Ceremony employs that kind of narrative strategy. Critics often use postmodernism to refer to literature and art produced after the Second World War that take modernist technique to an extreme. So, heavily affected by the brutality of Nazi atrocities during the war and the specter of nuclear holocaust, much postmodern literature shows an extreme pessimism of the human condition. With its hyper self-reflexivity, it's often fractured and disjointed, relaying of action and its play on language. Postmodern narration makes sense for post-colonial writers, many of whom are attempting to subvert colonial representations of their world and traditions. So, at the beginning of this discourse, Dr. Vaibhav has asked me to briefly talk about decolonization. So, here we can easily find that how post-colonial writers in the recent years are trying their level best to subvert this notion of narrating their plots or stories in a different way in order to decolonize their mindset towards their culture or their history. Hmm.
Sir, have you finished, sir?
Just a minute. I would like maybe I can speak for a while in Hindi,
Yes, yes, please, please, sir.
or do you want to say something?
No, no, I was asking about my question.
Okay, let me
And you
finish.
have spoken on it just now.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm coming to your
Decolonize
point,
and all that.
Vaibhav. Just give me some time so that
Okay.
I can wind up in Hindi because as you have told me and many
We
of
have
the
a time, sir. Half an hour we have a time.
okay.
Last 15 minutes we will put for a question answer.
Okay, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yes.
पोस्ट कोलोनियलिज्म के बारे में हमने शुरुआत की थी कि इसे हम उत्तर औपनिवेशिकता भी कह सकते हैं और यह एक सैद्धांतिक साहित्यिक और सांस्कृतिक विमर्श है जो कोलोनियलिज्म के मतलब उपनिवेशवाद के ऐतिहासिक राजनीतिक सामाजिक और मनोवैज्ञानिक प्रभावों का विश्लेषण करता है यह विमर्श केवल औपनिवेशिक शासन की समाप्ति के बाद की स्थिति तक सीमित नहीं है बल्कि औपनिवेशिक शक्ति संरचनाओं ज्ञान उत्पादन सांस्कृतिक वर्चस्व और पहचान निर्मित की दीर्घकालिक प्रक्रियाओं को भी क्या उजागर करता है सो इस दृष्टि से देखा जाए तो पोस्ट इन द वर्ड पोस्ट कोलोनियलिज्म, पोस्ट शब्द किसी काल विशेष का सूचक न होकर औपनिवेशिक प्रभावों के प्रति आलोचनात्मक चेतना का संकेतक है। डू यू अंडरस्टैंड? उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श का मुख्य फोकस, प्राइमरी फोकस सत्ता और ज्ञान के संबंध से है। यूरोपीय उपनिवेशवाद, उसे जिसे हम कॉलोनियलिज्म कहते हैं, उसने केवल राजनीतिक और आर्थिक शोषण ही नहीं किया, बल्कि उसने ज्ञान, इतिहास, भाषा और संस्कृति को भी अपने अनुकूल गढ़ा, तैयार किया। उपनिवेशित समाजों का असभ्य, पिछड़ा और अन्य, इन इंग्लिश वी कॉल इट अदर, के रूप में उसे प्रस्तुत किया गया। लेकिन एडवर्ड सईद की ओरिएंटलिज्म की जो संकल्पना है, जो उन्होंने अपने किताब द सिग्निफिकेंट बुक in which he has propounded his ideas about the conflict between Occidental and Western culture. So एडवर्ड सईद की ओरिएंटलिज्म इस संदर्भ में एक महत्वपूर्ण किताब ग्रंथ है, जिसमें सईद बताते हैं कि किस प्रकार पश्चिम ने ईस्टर्न 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 की एक इमेजिनरी, कल्पित और डिस्टॉर्टेड, विकृत छवि निर्माण की है, और जिससे औपनिवेशिक वर्चस्व को वैध ठहराया जा सकता है। लेकिन उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श में पहचान, आइडेंटिटी का प्रश्न बहुत गहरा और महत्वपूर्ण है, जिसके बारे में मैंने अभी बात की है। औपनिवेशिक शासन के दौरान उपनिवेशित व्यक्ति को सांस्कृतिक पहचान उसकी खंडित हो जाती है। लेकिन होमी भाभा के अनुसार उपनिवेशित समाजों में हाइब्रिडिटी, मिमिक्री और थर्ड स्पेस जैसी अवस्थाएं उत्पन्न होती है, जहां न तो पूर्णतः औपनिवेशिक संस्कृति अपनाई जाती है और न ही पारंपरिक संस्कृति शुद्ध रूप में बची रहती है। यह सांस्कृतिक द्वंद्व, द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, उत्तर औपनिवेशिक साहित्य में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण, गहरे रूप से अभिव्यक्त होता है। तो गायत्री स्पिवैक का प्रश्न, कैन सबाल्टन स्पीक, क्या सबाल्टन बोल सकता है, उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श को एक नया नैतिक और राजनीतिक एस्पेक्ट, आयाम प्रदान करता है। स्पिवैक यह रेखांकित करती है कि औपनिवेशिक और उत्तर औपनिवेशिक दोनों सत्ता संरचनाओं में समुदायों, विशेषतः स्त्रियों और निम्न वर्गीय समूहों की आवाज दबा दी जाती है। इस प्रकार उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श केवल औपनिवेशिक सत्ता की आलोचना ही नहीं करता, बल्कि स्वतंत्रता के बाद की राष्ट्रवादी और आदर संरचनाओं की भी समीक्षा करता है। भाषा, जैसे मैंने अभी कहा, लैंग्वेज इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ पोस्ट कॉलोनियल डिस्कोर्स। भाषा उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श का एक बहुत बहुत बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण क्षेत्र है। औपनिवेशिक भाषाएं जैसे अंग्रेजी शिक्षा, प्रशासन और साहित्य की प्रमुख माध्यम बन गई। इस संदर्भ में यह प्रश्न उठता है कि क्या उपनिवेशित लेखक औपनिवेशिक भाषा में लिखकर भी प्रतिरोध कर सकता है? चिनुआ अचेबे, थियांगो, सलमान रश्दी जैसे लेखक इस बहस इस चर्चा के सेंट्रल फोकस केंद्र में रह चुके हैं। और हिंदी साहित्य में भी यह विमर्श स्थानीय भाषाओं, लोक संस्कृति और दृष्टिकोण की पुनर्स्थापना के रूप में दिखाई देता है। भारतीय संदर्भ में उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श केवल अंग्रेजी साहित्य तक सीमित नहीं है। हिंदी साहित्य में भी मेरे हिसाब से प्रेमचंद, महाश्वेता देवी और समकालीन दलित एवं आदिवासी लेखन में औपनिवेशिक और नव औपनिवेशिक शोषण की आलोचना मिलती है। और यहाँ उत्तर औपनिवेशिकता का संबंध जाति, वर्ग, लिंग और क्षेत्रीय असमानताओं के से जुड़ जाता है, जिससे यह विमर्श मच मोर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड और बहुत ज्यादा जटिल और व्यापक हो जाता है। इफ वी लुक एट दिस डिस्कोर्स फ्रॉम क्रिटिकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, आलोचनात्मक दृष्टि से इसे देखा जाए तो उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श पर यह आरोप भी लगाया जाता है कि वह बहुत ही सैद्धांतिक, एकेडमिक और पश्चिम केंद्रित हो गया है। लेकिन सम क्रिटिक्स, कुछ आलोचकों के विचारों से उनके अनुसार यह विमर्श गरीबी, श्रम, वर्ग संघर्ष से कट जाता है और सांस्कृतिक विश्लेषण तक सीमित रह जाता है। इसके बावजूद यह निर्विवाद है कि उत्तर औपनिवेशिकता ने साहित्य अध्ययन को एक नया आयाम, दृष्टिकोण, पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, पर्सपेक्टिव दिया है और जिसने इतिहास, संस्कृति और सत्ता के संबंधों को पुनर्परिभाषित किया है। So, in short, in conclusion, we can say that उत्तर औपनिवेशिक विमर्श उपनिवेशवाद के विरुद्ध बौद्धिक प्रतिरोध की एक सशक्त परंपरा है। यह न केवल अतीत के औपनिवेशिक अन्यायों की समीक्षा करता है, बल्कि वर्तमान विश्व में विद्यमान नव औपनिवेशिक प्रवृत्तियों, वैश्वीकरण, सांस्कृतिक साम्राज्यवाद और आर्थिक निर्भरता को भी उजागर करता है। इस प्रकार मुझे लगता है, मेरे ख्याल से उत्तर औपनिवेशिकता साहित्य, संस्कृति और समाज को समझने का एक बहुत बड़ा, महत्वपूर्ण, प्रभावशाली आलोचनात्मक उपकरण माना जा सकता है। I think we have discussed much. If you want to add anything, please feel free to comfortable to raise your. अगर आपको लगता है इसमें कुछ जोड़ना है, इसमें कुछ आपकी राय, अगर आप कुछ ऐड करना चाहते हैं, प्लीज फील फ्री। मैं ये बिल्कुल नहीं कहता कि जो भी मैंने डिस्कस किया है वो फुल फाइनल है। दिस इज जस्ट अ ब्रीफ अटेम्प्ट टू डील विथ द टॉपिक colonialism and post-colonialism. There may be many other issues, various opinions of many of you, because I know very well that many of you are teachers in many reputed institutions and colleges. You are also experienced in the field of teaching and especially literary teaching. येस प्लीज.
येस सर, मी वैभव बोलतोय सर.
हा सर,
हा,
वैभव.
तर मला विचारायचं असं होतं की जर आपण हे म्हणजे तुम्ही आता शेवटी शेवटी पण सांगितलं की डिकलोनायझेशन वगैरे त्याचं तुम्ही थोडा प्रकाश टाकला सर त्याच्यावर.
हो,
तर मला असं म्हणायचं होतं की ही नवीन इंग्लिश मध्ये थेअरी होऊ शकते का? इट वुड बी अ थेअरी इन टू इंग्लिश लिटरेचर.
वाय नॉट. हो हो, निश्चित निश्चित वैभव, अगदी.
So which aspects we have to touch for that actually? Because some literature like Arundhati Roy or Gayatri Spivak or Homi Baba speaking about it. So after that, I have realized that it may be a new theory into the literature, that decolonization
हो हो हो,
theory.
का नाही? कारण आपण आता झालं ना, देशाला स्वातंत्र्य मिळून 70-75 वर्ष
आता
झालेली आहेत.
हा,
कोलोनियल माइंडसेट मधून आपण आता पुढे आलेलो आहोत. पोस्ट
पूर्णपणे
कोलोनियल
बाहेर आहे.
पोस्ट कोलोनियल माइंडसेट मधून सुद्धा आता आपण पुढे सरकत आहोत. तर मग आता डिकोलोनायझेशनची गरज का नसावी?
हम्म. हम्म. ते असं म्हणजे कारण माझा विषय जो होता सर PhDचा, तो पार्टिशन लिटरेचर होता सर.
पार्टिशन लिटरेचर. ओके
हा, कुलवंत सिंग, अमृता प्रीतम आणि पाकिस्तानी प्रॉस्पेक्टिव्ह पाहण्यासाठी बापसी सिद्वा घेतलं होतं सर मी.
ओके ओके.
हा, अभ्यासादरम्यान माझ्या डोक्यात ही कल्पना आली होती आणि मग एकदा मी मुस्तजीब सरांना सोबत पण डिस्कस केलं याच्यावर.
हो
आणि
हो.
मग आज नेमकं तो टॉपिक घेतला म्हणून मग मला विचारावं वाटलं.
अच्छा. नाही नाही,
म्हणजे
हा
काम करता येईल का असं विचारत होतो सर.
नक्कीच नक्कीच, का नाही?
हा,
कारण
म्हणजे
हा
त्याच्यात
अतिशय महत्वाचा मुद्दा आहे वैभव. कारण
हा,
या विषयावरती काम होणं हे अत्यंत
गरजेचं.
गरजेचं आहे. जे काही थोडं बहुत उपलब्ध आहे ते
हम्म.
फारसं परिपूर्ण किंवा समाधानकारक आहे असं मी बिलकुल म्हणणार नाही.
बरं बरं.
त्यामुळं तू जो मुद्दा उपस्थित केलेला आहेस तो अतिशय गंभीर आणि महत्वाचा आहे. ह्याच्यामध्ये काम करायला चांगला वाव आहे. आणि उपस्थित अनेक इथं प्राध्यापक आहेत वेगवेगळ्या संस्थांमध्ये, कॉलेजेसमध्ये काम करणारे. त्यांनी या मुद्द्याचा जरूर विचार करावा.
ओके, धन्यवाद सर.
थँक्यू थँक्यू वैभव.
आणि अजून कोणाला प्रश्न असल्यास प्लीज सरांना प्रश्न करा, कारण सरांनी आपल्याला भरपूर वेळ दिलेला आहे. तर आता एक शेवटचे 10 मिनिटं राहिलेत. त्याच्यात ज्याला
ठीक
काही
आहे.
शंका असतील किंवा
अगदी
लेक्चर
अगदी.
बद्दल तुम्हाला काही मत व्यक्त करायचं असेल तर हाऊस इज ओपन फॉर डिस्कशन.
हो, मी त्याच्याही पुढे असं म्हणेन, मी मगाशीही म्हणालो, आणखीन एकदा सांगतो, मी जे आता डिस्कस केलंय ते काही परिपूर्ण आहे असं मी कधीही क्लेम करणार नाही. कारण अनेक मुद्दे राहून गेलेले आहेत. एवढ्या कमी वेळात सगळ्याच गोष्टी डिस्कस करणं शक्य नसतं. त्यामुळं उपस्थितांपैकी काही लोकांनी जर याच्यामध्ये भर घातली किंवा आणखीन काही मुद्दे समोर आणले तरी त्याचं स्वागतच असेल.
All the participants has request that they should have to ask their questions to the expert. If you don't have a questions, then I will declare the session will over.
Sir, am I
Yes,
audible,
yes.
sir?
हो
Yes,
हो.
yes, you are audible.
Okay. Sir, I am Dr. Gerald from St. Joseph's College, Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu. I have a question, sir. The question is, there is normally an accusation placed against the post-colonial writers that they present, particularly writers from India who are abroad. When they write about India, they only present the seamy side of India. Um,
Which side of India?
Only the seamy side, the ugly side of India.
Okay, 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 okay.
Normally, post-colonial writers they want to present the real situations in India, but normally there are other writers also who also present the positive side, but they are not awarded. But these writers who present India in ugly light, they are normally awarded by the Western award forums. And there
Okay.
is some politics, right, sir? How do we deal with these things?
Yes, that is a very good observation or regarding the post-colonial discourse and especially how it is presented to the readers. I think this question or this idea can be addressed with the help of the point of view technique which is commonly used in post-colonial literature. I'm sure post point of view refers to the eyes and sensibility through which a story or uh, the story is told or information is presented to the readers. So post-colonial literature challenges status quo Western points of view through using narrators who represent previously silenced or oppressed people. Since much literature from colonized countries was written from the colonizers, usually male point of view, it's not surprising that much post-colonial literature also employs narrators who themselves are doubly oppressed, being both colonized by outsiders and being women. Silko, Dantikat, and numerous other post-colonial writers express the particular difficulties women from colonized countries face as they battle patriarchal attitudes and institutions of their oppressors, as well as from their own people. Now, you have said that they present the darker, negative, ugly side of the country or the culture. Am I right?
Even the culture, the portrayal of certain characters, the protagonists in
Yes,
certain
yes.
novels appears to be very damaging the Indian identity. That all the people only crave for money, that they would be like the novel The White Tiger by Aravind Dadiga, where he presents all Indians as one who is interested in climbing up the ladder alone, for which they will go to any extent.
Yes. So
That kind of generalization will damage the Indian identity. That's what
yes.
we normally feel.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it depends on the writer's perspective and the point of view which he or she tries to employ in his work in order to depict the reality about the character, about the situation, about the location, or about the culture. But usually, it depends on the point of view. So, as I have just mentioned, that post-colonial literature challenges status quo Western points of view through using narrators who represent previously silenced or oppressed people.
Thank
Maybe,
you, sir.
yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad that, yeah, is it echo? What is happening?
हॅलो, कुणाचे काही क्वेश्चन असतील तर विचारा, नाही तर वोट ऑफ थँक्ससाठी तयार आहे मी.
Okay.
हॅलो. I am here for vote of thanks. So thank you so much to Professor respected Prabhanjan Baburao Mane sir. Sir, for your inspirational and knowledgeable words. Thank you to interact with us on the topic colonial literature. In this session, Professor Prabhanjan Mane sir clearly explained to meaning of colonial literature and discuss important ideas such as power relation between rulers and the ruled, cultural conflict, identity issues, and the influence of language. He also briefly explained the post-colonial response. His simple language and suitable examples made the topic very easy to understand. We are truly grateful to Professor Prabhanjan Mane sir for his valuable guidance and inspiring lecture. I also would like to thank Professor Dhanasri Mahajan Madam, Director of UGC MMTTC, Coordinator Abdul Rafe sir and their supporting team members Gaurav sir and Amal Madan sir for arranging wonderful lecture. You all attendees who made this event a resounding. Thank you sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So participants now will leave. Bye bye. See you all at 2:45.